Rex Heuermann, the man charged with the string of gruesome killings going back decades, is back in a Long Island courtroom today.
This is a case where, obviously captured the public's imagination.
Prosecutors turning over thousands of pages of evidence and over 7,000 tips to Heuermann's defense team.
An additional 60,000 pages of copies of documents and materials were recovered from the July 2023 search warrant.
For years, communities across Long Island lived in fear.
4 bodies and counting.
Police are worried they have a serial killer on the loose.
After 4 bodies wrapped in burlap were dumped in a marshy area along this Long Island beach in 2010, the bodies all found within a quarter mile of each other. They became known as the Gilgo Beach murders.
Rex, did you do it?
The killer remained on the loose until last year when Heuermann, an architect, was arrested outside of his Manhattan office and charged with the murders of the so-called Gilgo Four. Michael Brown is his attorney.
He still wants his day in court. He wants his trial.
His client is being held at the Suffolk County Correctional Facility while awaiting trial.
This is an individual who is a professional. He has no prior criminal history. He was used to getting on a train in the morning, going to work, supporting his family, and coming home at night. And now you took this individual and he's in a cell by himself.
Today's conference comes less than 2 months after Heuermann was charged with 2 additional murders, bringing the total to 6. At the time, prosecutors also releasing a chilling document they say are sickening instructions Heuermann wrote to himself. Hit harder, use heavy rope, get sleep before a hunt, remove marks from torture. Also included in what prosecutors are calling a blueprint for murder.
Meticulous planning and clear intent is obvious. His intent was nothing short but to murder these victims.
Investigators revealing more chilling details about the alleged serial killer.
Heuermann had a significant collection of violent, bondage, and torture pornography, which was dating back to 1994, and that material was very similar to the condition that the 2 latest victims were left in.
Heuermann allegedly reminded himself to consider a hit to the face or the neck next time, and things to remember: sound travels.
When you see words like more sleep and noise control equals more playtime, you can't help but think what those victims went through in their final moments. This wasn't a quick death. They were tortured.
The 2 new murder charges coming after an exhaustive search of Heuermann's home in Massapequa Park, Long Island, a suburban community outside of New York City, where investigators seized 350 electronic devices, including the computer the document was found on.
I can't express what this day means after waiting and hoping for answers.
One of the new murder charges was for Jessica Taylor, a sex worker who disappeared in 2003.
This year has been 21 years since she was taken from us, longer than the chance that she got to be alive.
Her body was recovered on July 26 in 2003. She was decapitated and her hands and arms were severed just below the elbows. 8 years later, her arms and skull were found on Ocean Parkway.
Taylor was found decapitated in the woods in Manorville, New York. More of her remains were found at Gilgo Beach near the bodies of 4 of Heuermann's other alleged victims. The second new charge is for the death of Sandra Castilla, a 28-year-old whose remains were found in Southampton. She was killed in 1993.
The victim suffered numerous sharp force injuries, 25 in all, which we believe were post-mortem.
Prosecutors said advanced DNA testing in hairs found on or near Castilla and Taylor established a link between Heuermann and these victims. With one of the crimes taking place more than 30 years ago, prosecutors are now broadening their timeline, re-examining more accounts of missing women.
With the universe of information that we have, not only in this case, but other cases, how can we work towards solving some of these cold cases?
Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. The Gilgo Beach murders rocking this tourist destination, known for its sandy beaches and long stretches of marshlands, something the former police commissioner showed my colleague, Deborah Roberts.
Now, how easy would it be for somebody to come and dump remains out in this area?
This is I hate to say it, but not a bad place to do it. The road is fairly straight. You can see traffic coming for miles. If it was at night, you would see the headlights of the cars coming. Back then, there was no guardrail here, so you could pull your car right up against the brush, discard, human remains in there and then drive off.
The bodies of the first 4 victims identified as Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes.
She didn't deserve this, just like nobody else's mother or sister or daughter deserves this. She really was a fabulous person, just lost in life.
The women, all in their 20s, petite, and sex workers.
The manhunt for a serial killer underway right now on New York's Long Island. The FBI preparing high-resolution cameras to fly over the area where police found human remains.
The case went cold, and a serial killer stayed on the loose. But then years later, a new task force restarted the investigation.
What's important about these cold case task force is to have outside parties with a fresh perspective come in and look at the evidence for the first time on their own with no preconceived notions. And we saw that happen here.
Investigators zeroed in on their suspect, Rex Heuermann, a married father of 2 and an architect, using DNA technology, his car and cell phone data. Prosecutors said the killer contacted his victims using burner phones and later took the victims' cell phones, sometimes using their phones to call and torment his victims' families. Those cell phone records narrow the area where the suspect could be, tracking them to locations near Heuermann's office in Midtown Manhattan and his home in Massapequa Park. Detectives then looked to see who in that area owned a distinctive vehicle allegedly tied to one of the murders, a Chevrolet Avalanche.
There was a document from one of the victims where days before she was murdered, there was a John described as an ogre, and it was Rex Heuermann's description to a T. But even more importantly, they described this John going out to a black pickup truck. But the specifics about this pickup truck are important because it was described in a way that would only match one vehicle particularly, and that's a Chevy Avalanche.
The Avalanche reduced the pool of possible suspects from thousands to dozens. Then police say they found a pizza crust in this trash can outside of Heuermann's office, which they used to take a DNA sample. That sample matching DNA from a hair found on one of the victims, according to police.
Rex, did you do it?
They arrested Heuermann, who was 6'4", outside of his Manhattan office in 2023, initially charging the now 60-year-old with the death of the so-called Gilgo 4.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us.
Prosecutors also say Heuermann was living a double life. The public saw a father of 2, an architect who commuted into New York City.
I'm an architectural consultant. I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Heuermann appearing in this YouTube video over 2 years ago, around the time investigators formed the new task force and began to suspect he could be a killer. Court documents claim that he allegedly used fake names to sign up for multiple emails, which he used to search for sex workers, child and torture pornography, and he even had a Tinder profile looking for dates or hookups. Heuermann also allegedly searched, "Why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught?" and Long Island serial killer update. Heuermann is due back in court in October.